One spring morning in the year 2000, I was suddenly awakened by a telephone call at about 3 a.m. on a Sunday morning. And this voice on the other end said, "Mr. Brown?" I said, "Yes." "I am calling from Belgium." I said, "Oh, and what are you selling?" he, he went on to explain that his name was Mark Vishuris. He was a teacher at a high school in Ghent, Belgium, and he was writing a book about some members of the Belgian resistance in World War II. And he had just learned that my crew had made a supply drop on a site in Belgium where the principal in the book was a part of the reception committee. And he asked me some questions about it, and I went on to explain to him. And he said, "Well, what did you do?" I said, "I was a bombardier." He said, "Oh, the bombardier." I said, "Well, whatever." He said, "What did you do?" I said, "I made the drop." "Oh, wonderful." Well, anyway, he explained that his book was going in for print in about 2 weeks and asked me to send him some information and a picture of the crew, which I did. And then he told me that there would be a publication party in the Ghent Town Hall in Ghent, Belgium, and he would send me an invitation. So I sent him the material, and he sent me an invitation, and I flew to Brussels for the reception. So fortunately, he made arrangements for this wonderful gentleman to meet me when I arrived in Belgium. His name was René Landos, and he had joined the Belgian resistance at the age of 16. He had tried to join earlier, but his father told him to go talk with the priest, and he did, and the priest persuaded him to wait until he was 16. So he did, and then he joined. And I can't tell you all about everything that he did during that time, but I will relate one thing. He rescued 5 members of one of our crews that was shot down by a German night fighter and hid them away so that the Gestapo never found them. But anyway, when I arrived in Belgium, Mark said, "Orrin, the Belgian Secret Army has something for you, but I can't tell you what." So that evening, it's beautiful old town hall there in Ghent, and they had like a raised platform at one end of the hall. And there were several people on the stage, including Mark and myself. So at one point during the ceremony, a beautiful young girl walked up and presented me with a bouquet of roses. Turned out later it was one of Mark's daughters. But anyway, at one point, a gentleman got up and made some kind of an announcement. Now, they were all speaking in Flemish, and I didn't understand one word that was being said. So they all applauded after he made his little talk. So finally, when the ceremony ended, I walked back down, and they had a little reception at the other end of the hall. And the first thing that happened was a lady walked up and got right in my face, and she said, "Did you bomb my town?" I said, "No, ma'am, I didn't bomb anybody." And I asked Renee to help me to explain to her. But what had happened was she lived in a little town not far out of Ghent, which had a big rail yard, and the Germans used that to transport troops. And the RCAF had been bombing the place night after night, carpet bombing, and they killed several hundred civilians in the process, but they succeeded in knocking out the rail yards. So anyway, we survived that. And then Renee said, Orrin, did you understand what that gentleman said? And I said, not one word, Renee. He said they had announced that they had awarded you the Belgian Cross, the highest military honor that the Belgians had. Well, it turned out that they had ordered the medal, but for some reason it had not arrived, and so they didn't actually present me with anything. They just made this announcement in Flemish, so that was why it turned out the way it did. But anyway, Mark did mail me the medal later, so I did actually receive it.
It was a good trip.
Mm-hmm.
But Renee was a wonderful person. We went back to Belgium 2 years later, and I took all three of the daughters with me. And Bibi, you remember, we visited Renee's home down in Clairac, yeah, down in the south of France. He and his wife had bought this old French farmhouse that probably was 150 years old and made out of solid stone. You know, it looked like it'd be there another 150 years, probably will. But I remember just across the road from the little farmhouse was another place, and they had a little garden there. They had cherry trees, and they were in full fruit. And I remember how the girls just went crazy over those cherries.
That was